Hey everybody, Chris here from the Off-Grid Schoolie. Every Friday we're going to be having a new podcast. I figured I would start off the new series of podcasts with Chad from Living the Van Life. We started producing YouTube videos around the same time, about 8-9 years ago now. It was great catching up with him. I hope to be doing some more collaborative work with him in the future. Thanks for watching. Also, today's video is brought to you by the Schoolie Manual. Be linked down below. It's how I built my bus, as well as how I make money on the road. So that's $9, 100% money back guarantee. If you don't get any value out of it, send your money back. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, download, all that fun stuff. We will catch you next Friday.
So everybody, Chris here from the Off-Grid Schoolie. Previously, Chris and G Travels had a lot of different names, and we have one of the original OGs of van life on YouTube. We have Chad. Say what's up, bud.
What's up, guys? Chad with Living the Van Life up here in Washington. Hanging out with this guy, Chris Penn, who he's one of the OGs. He was like one of the first ones I watched when started getting into van life. So it's pretty cool to catch up with you, man.
Yeah, and it's just like with Kyle Pounds, Jeff the Canuck, like those were the godfathers, I call them, man. Like just watching their videos, watching Jeff the Canuck drive through the back country of the Grand Canyon, and him talking about just his water supply and making it through those roads. I was like, oh my gosh, like he's actually doing it, and that's what I want to do, you know. So even we had our motivators from the beginning, but for those that don't know who you are, which I think a lot of people watching my channel, well, I guess I'm going into schoolies now, so I might have a new demographic. Just to catch up people, just a quick update to who you are, what you're up to, and just your whole setup right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I had worked construction for 18 years of my life. I started in a family business when I was 14, doing construction equipment rentals, and kind of grew up doing that. That was my career. That was my living. And I always enjoyed photography and filmmaking, and decided that one day I wanted to be doing something that I loved doing, and had the opportunity to quit that 18-year career in the construction industry and started following my passion to become a photographer, which eventually led to filmmaking. And it came about, you know, when I was making that decision to make that jump. You know, you come to rely on the full-time income and the house and the car payments. It's like, well, oh my God, I can't live my life without this full-time job and career. And the opportunity, the idea presented itself to me. It was actually my mom. She was like, well, why don't you live in your van? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't do that. And that's where I standing there in that moment, I pulled up YouTube and YouTube living in a van. And that's when I found Kyle Pound, found yourself, like when back in the day when you were living on college campus in your van, and, you know, this small group of people that were doing it. And in those moments, that's when I realized, like, these guys are doing it, I can do it too. And took that leap of faith. And February 1st, 2011 was my first night sleeping in my van. And at that point, I didn't know if it was going to last a day, a week, a month, or whatever. And here we are. It's 2019. So it's been just over 8 years since that first night in the van. And I tell you what, it's like changed my life so hugely. Like, not only did it teach me so much about living in a van and that you can live with such a little amount, but it's taught me so much about life, and it's opened up all these opportunities to grow and expand life and do what you love to do. So
absolutely. Yeah, I just by the way, that was Eric. He's helped me do some woodwork on the bus. I'm right now. I'm near Vegas. I'm doing a show, bus fair show, actually, in Oregon, and basically just trying to get everything painted and the rest of the woodwork done before the show. But I just actually calculated my daily cost to living in the bus. Like yesterday, actually the last 3 days I've been at this spot, and how much it cost me to live and have all my electricity, all my water, all my food was $56 a day, right? And that's health insurance, vehicle insurance, cell phone. I have 3 different. I have my phone for Wi-Fi, and I have an AT&T and a Verizon card, just because obviously living this lifestyle, you have to have internet.
Yeah.
That's food, that's everything. $56 a day. And when you only spend $56 a day on everything, all of a sudden you're free to do whatever you want, and you're free to save and reinvest that money to actually put it into your future, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the premise of what a lot of these younger people that are doing this, the older people, the retiring people, they could either move down to Florida and buy something, or they can get a rig, live simply, live cheaply, be able to use their retirement. For young people, they're able to work remote jobs where if they were stationary, if they had to pay rent every month, they have to be paid $30 an hour. But if they're able to work remote for $15 an hour, they have a better quality of life. They're actually able to save more money. They live cheaply, and they're able to go explore and do amazing things. Like it seems like the trend is going to be going more and more into the future of this lifestyle as younger people, they don't buy houses, they don't buy cars. The amount of people,
Yeah.
young people that just get Uber, they don't even want to buy a car. And then if
Yeah.
they get into the idea, well, I can just build a van, live cheaply, and be able to pursue my passions, because back behind you, behind your shoulder, out of nothing, you kind of touch base on how
Yeah.
van life helped you transition into that and exactly what that project is.
Yeah. So it was about 4 or 5 months after I started living in my van, and I was really enjoying all the freedoms of being able to go and shoot photography, and just being able to focus on my passion and the craft that I wanted to build. And it was great. And like I said, about 4 or 5 months into van life, I was doing a magazine shoot with a group of motorcycle builders that are here, actually a couple brothers that are here in Bellingham, Washington. And after the shoot was done, we were putting the bike away, and they were talking about they were going to Bonneville to go race motorcycles. It was their first trip ever going there. And Bonneville, if you've ever seen the world's fastest Indian, they kind of do a great job of depicting the history that's there. And it's such a great film. It was a huge inspiration for what we did here. But Bonneville is this legendary racetrack that has a ton of history and a lot of records set there. So these guys' passion for wanting to go to Bonneville was pretty awesome. And at first I was like, you know what? I don't do video anymore. I'm just more of a still photography guy, and I'm not interested in coming and doing any filming. And I had done video just as a hobby years before that. And I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? That's an opportunity to tell the story that I've always wanted to tell through video and stuff years past. And in that moment, I was kind of sitting thinking, I was like, really, I should do this. And I live in my van. I have no excuse not to go do this. It's not like, oh, well, I can't get the time off of work or whatever. Like, the reasons I started living in my van were exactly the reasons I needed to go start filming this film. And so I was like, you know what, let's do this. And I have no excuse not to. This is exactly why I live in my van. And so that turned into one trip to Bonneville to 3 years later, we've got a full feature-length film, and got distribution and got to do film festivals all over the world, and it's won several awards at those film festivals. And so it's just amazing opportunity. It was a perfect example of the freedom that van life can allow you. And that's just led to so many other things, other work opportunities. And we're on our second production right now that we've been working on for the last 3 years, another feature-length documentary. So
that's awesome, man. So one of the biggest hangups for a lot of people doing this lifestyle is figuring out how to make the financials work. And for you, it seemed as though, I mean, people throw around follow your passion, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, a lot of times that doesn't pay the bills immediately. You got to put the time in, you got to put the work in. You had skills to begin with. You had the gear and you had the opportunity. So when it comes down to people looking into this lifestyle, trying to get it figured out, do you have any insights? Because what I always tell people is, like, for me, I had a real estate lead gen job that paid anywhere from $70 to $100 a day. Basically woke up at 5 every morning, worked that job for 4 or 5 hours, and then I had the rest of the day free to then pursue building other revenue streams, right? That's kind of the way that I did. I did a job that necessarily wasn't fun, at least, well, I don't want to say at least, I was calling the Nashville areas. People were pretty polite there, but I'd say once every 1 or 3 days, I would get just cussed out on the phone and just, railed by some dude I've been trying to get to sign with our brokerage. But
Yeah.
I was willing to put the time and effort in. Do you have any insights, any advice for people that are very interested in this lifestyle, but they don't know how to figure out the financials? Like whether that be developing skills, do you suggest they go back to school for something? Do you suggest they just go out there and try and make something work? Another thing for me is diverse income streams, having multiple income streams. So if one goes up 1 month and the other one is lower, then it's a wash, right? Like you're still making your money. Do you have any insights to that?
Yeah, I think it's several things. Like, I think the opportunity to live in a van is to be able to rethink your life and learn how to live more minimally. And that's been the thing, is like really trying to drill down of what is the most basic that I can live my life. And kind of the information that you were coming up with earlier is like you figured out what your daily income is. And like that, for other van dwellers, that information that you came up with is huge to other people thinking about doing it. So that's pretty cool you came up with that. I know a lot of people have asked me that, and I've just never taken the time to actually figure it out. But I think one thing for me is like I've really just dialed in and how can I make my life the most basic? And that doesn't just happen overnight. It happens over time, sometimes over years. But how basic can I make my life so that I can minimize any of those bills? And it's amazing. You start realizing that you can live on such a small amount. And when you start realizing that you can live that way, then you realize that you're getting paid with fulfillment and not money. Like a lot of people work to get paid money so that they can take that money and go buy something that they feel is going to fulfill them. And what I realize is like, if you kind of eliminate money out of it or make money a second priority, then you realize that you're getting paid with fulfillment because you're getting to go do the things that you love to do, whether it's you're working in a remote spot where you can experience those amazing things out in the desert around Phoenix or wherever you want to go, pick your poison. And so I think really learning to be rich with fulfillment, then all of a sudden money can take a back seat. Yes, of course, there's always bills to be paid, but I think with like what you were saying, being creative, being open to ideas. A lot of people think, well, this is what I'm good at. This is my job that I've worked for so many years. I'm stuck in this. But it's like there's so many opportunities to earn income, and I think being creative in that aspect is huge, and being open to ideas. Figuring out what you can do remotely. With YouTube, it helps having the camera gear and, having years of experience of creating content. Like that makes it easier to build content. But YouTube, I think, is such a cool opportunity for people to be able to generate an income. And it takes a lot of years. It's not like, oh, okay, cool, I'm going to go do the work tomorrow and, collect a paycheck at the end of the week. Like, it takes years, but that's something you can build. But then the more you grow your channel, as you know, like you get all these other opportunities to bring in the different streams of income. So, but I think just seriously learning to minimize your lifestyle, and a lot of people are afraid to do that because, oh, I can't live without that, or I can't live without this, or, you realize that you can live that way. And it just allows you to earn the fulfillment, not necessarily earn the money that you think you're going to need to buy the fulfillment, if that makes sense.
With YouTube channels, a lot of people, I mean, especially right now with the popularity of YouTube and PewDiePie and everybody hearing people making multi-million dollars per month, right? They just think it's going to be easy cash. And I say this all the time, but the first month that I was making content for YouTube, when I first moved into the van, I made 25 cents the first month, and it was the coolest thing that to this day, like one of the top 5 coolest things that ever happened, where I was able to produce something that I enjoyed doing, something that I was passionate about, something that I wanted to share, and I made money off of it. And when it comes down to the hourly on that, like that was shooting, editing, all that, I was getting paid pennies per hour, right? Like, but the thing is, I absolutely enjoyed it. Like going back to what you're talking about being fulfilled, like it was so cool that I was getting 30, 40 views per video and getting like 4 or 5 comments per video. it was the coolest thing ever, right?
Yeah.
And I still I haven't lost that, where when you upload a video and it does well, and the comments of people saying, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that. This is so cool. I'm going to research this." Like it's amazing. Even on top of that, I'm sure you get these messages too. People saying, "Hey, I just got my rig. I was watching your videos and I finally went for it." That's like the top of the pyramid, right? Like
Right.
that's awesome. And you're
Unreal.
able to live a lifestyle that you want to, lifestyle that you love because of it. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's an amazing time to be alive, and we're very, very fortunate to be born on the right piece of dirt, to have the opportunity to have these rigs, to
Yeah.
take a school bus that costs $3,000 from a government auction and make it into a home, or just be
Yeah.
able to buy a van and have the funds, just live in the culture where we have this infrastructure, this setup where you can go to the gym and take showers, you can make money online. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just incredibly lucky, and
Yeah.
I think that's the part when people are asking me if this lifestyle is worth it, if they can do it, if they don't know they can do it. Like, you realize how lucky you are just to even be born in this country and to have this opportunity. I think if people
Yeah.
really sat down and thought about it for an hour or two and thought about how fortunate they are that they can even think about doing this lifestyle, just having as many resources as possible to do it, it just
Yeah.
it fathoms me. I mean, it's not for everybody, obviously, but the people that truly want to do it, if they wanted to, they absolutely could. You just got to put the work in. But I've
Yep.
learned, especially through the real estate job, when I worked with one of the brokerages, trying to bring someone on and have them do the hard work is way more rare than I ever thought possible. I thought that people have these opportunities. Of course, they're going to take advantage of it. And what I've learned is a lot of people are not willing to put in the work. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's complacency. I don't know if from the early upbringing they were told that they weren't able to do certain things, or it just wasn't part of their family culture to strive. I'm still trying to figure that one out, and I'll probably never figure it out really. But that's something that I think about constantly. Like, why don't people that want to do this lifestyle with all the opportunity, with all the things going their way, why don't they do it? I mean, I just was watching a video today with Warren Buffett. I think it was in the late 80s. He put it really, really well. And he said, so imagine that you you're at a spot where you're able to pick one ball out of 8 billion, and that's your lottery ball. And you only get one shot, you pick it, and that's it. And for us to be born in this country and have these opportunities, it was just like a one in, back in the 80s, it was a 1 in 6 chance to be born in this country. But now,
Wow.
I mean, that was the 80s. So now it's
Yeah.
probably 1 in 10. I don't know the math. Well, it has to be way less than that, because 8 billion people, 330 million in the US, right? I'll have to put an
Yeah.
annotation on here to actually see the odds, but just even having
Yeah.
the odds to begin with that, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of my motivation to do this, and not really having a fear of failure, just throwing it out there and just see what happens. I think that's where that comes from. Just the realization that that's the, like, just the math behind it. Just
Yeah.
makes it to the point to where I really don't care if I fail or something happens. Like, it's, well, at least just go out there and try.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like that's the first off, that's probably one of the biggest reasons that people don't even try, is because they're afraid of failing. But you gotta transform your mind into not being worried about failing. And it's a transformation of way of thinking. You have to start questioning culture and society and be like, well, why does culture and society say I have to live this way? And when you start questioning that and start like transforming your mind out of that way of thinking, and how can I do things differently, and who says I have to live that way, and be like, you know what, screw it, I want to live this other way. And you realize it's possible, and you realize that it's more fulfilling to do that. Like, yeah, you don't get the instant pay with YouTube, and it takes time, and just all that way of living, it takes time, but yeah, you're getting paid with fulfillment. And I think that's huge. And it's just training your mind to start thinking a little bit differently than that mainstream. Because just like when the idea was presented to me, well, why don't you live in your van? I'm like, I can't do that, And I think now with with so many people out there talking about it, it is cool to see other people talking about like, yeah, I just got my van, I'm going to go out and do it. And so it is cool to see that there's a lot of people doing it. And, but yeah, I so much think it's just a matter of changing your way of thinking about life. You know, you don't have to follow and conform.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're living examples of that. When it comes to all these new people getting into van life, the whole new hashtag van life, the whole deal, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think the drivers are? Because I mean, I kind of touch base on what I think it is. I think it's just a mental shift in younger people and older people that are retired. They're starting to realize they can retire more early and they can live more cheaply and go out and explore like the way they've always wanted to do. What's your whole thought on this new phenomena of everybody moving into rigs and traveling around?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I think people are, you know, of course, there's plenty of people that are kind of in it for the long term, but I think for the young generation, they see it on Instagram and it looks cool, it looks fashionable, and it's like, oh, cool, you know, I want to try that. I'm in college, like I'll try it for a month or so, or whatever. And you know, if people are doing that, if they're actually getting something out of it besides just like, oh, it's cool, you know, if they're able to change their life and realize that they don't need all this other stuff that society and our culture tells us that we need, like, then hell yeah, that's cool, you know. And if people are just doing it because it's like, oh, that looks like it's cool, I'll try it for a little bit, and then hopefully they at least get something out of it. But it is interesting to see like the whole glamorous side of it, and it's like, yeah, you know, that's kind of the glamorous side of it, but you know, I think it's cool to be able to stick to kind of the roots of where it all started for like you and I, you know, back in the day before there was any hashtag van life and all that like glamorous type stuff, and stick to the roots. And I think that's a lot of what people enjoy about our channels, is that it's kind of more of the down to earth version of it and the reality of it. And but hey, it's crazy. It's definitely taken on a whole commercial end of it, you know. So yeah, as long as they get something out of it, you know, rather than just like, hey, look at me, it's cool, you know.
Yeah. There is that fine line. I just saw a video yesterday where Red Bull is doing van tours of their athletes now. You know, it is becoming a whole new genre. And but I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I mean, the thing is, living this lifestyle, it makes you appreciate the small things, and it makes you appreciate running water, makes you appreciate power. And the thing is, as we move in the future, you know, we have finite resources on this earth, and you know, regardless whether you're team red, blue, tie, whatever, like none of that garbage. But the thing is, we do have limited resources, and it's living this lifestyle now. It just fathoms me that toilets flush 1.5 gallons of water per flush when I consume total per day, even showering, maybe 3 gallons, maybe 4 gallons. You know, it just, even when I wash my hands, you know, turn the water off beforehand, doing dishes at anybody else's house, it just completely shifts your mindset to something different that I think is much more productive. Whether you believe in climate change or not, there's only so much fresh water. There's only so much resources that we can go through. When your trash fills up in a van, you're more conscious of that, right? Like every scrap of material coming in and out of your rig, every drop of water coming in and out of your rig, it's actually counted, and you see it, and you see your impact, which I think, especially with younger people, just having that mindset, if they do the van thing, even for a month, like you said, I mean, getting that insight to how much people consume and how that whole thing works, it's definitely shifts your mindset to like, okay, I see the burden that I have on this world. Now I can start to dial it back. I mean, at least I hope they get that mindset from that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I would say now I feel like since I got back from Australia, we were over in Australia working on the film, doing post-production over there. And since we got back, I've been back into my van, and it's been, I set a tracker thing on my phone of when I started living in my van again back in October when we got back here. I think it's been 208 straight days, which is definitely a record for me. Like before, when I was living in the van, I'd spend definitely times, but then you'd crash at a friend's house or, crash on a couch somewhere or whatever. But this has been full on in a van, and it's allowed me to focus all of our resources, or all of my resources at least, into the film that we're working on now. And it's like, it's drilling down of how minimally can you live? How less of an impact can you make? Environmentally, it's great. Like, I can't say that that's my like number one goal, but it definitely helps, like not consuming so much and getting into that routine of living minimally. It's like, I think there's this whole minimalistic movement too. And I think all those go because somebody made it look cool on Instagram or social media. And if people can really change their lifestyle into living that way, I think that's freaking awesome, because we don't need it. We don't need all that stuff. Right now is probably one of the most fulfilled that I've ever felt. Like, it's because I feel like I'm living with a purpose. Like, yeah, I'm living in my van, not just because it's cool, but there's a whole purpose behind it. It's to work on this film, which is to do something that I love, but really we're creating it to inspire other people. And that's the whole basis, like, that I feel behind my van channel is like, I hope the message comes through that to inspire other people that they could, perhaps live this way or live more fulfilled by chasing something like this of living in a van and doing what you love,
Yeah, absolutely agree, man. Absolutely agree. When it comes down to when you actually moved into your rig, like you touch base on, kind of the transition, getting like, you mentioned it might be a couple months or even a couple years before you get the mindset to where you are now. What were some of the biggest challenges or biggest surprises in terms of transitioning? Like what was most difficult for you, or was it just a day by day process where, you're just essentially every journey starts with one step? Was it just like, okay, here we go, and you just can, plod on? Or, can you kind of touch base on that, kind of the big things and how that process went?
Yeah. I would say it's definitely ever evolving. And I think even before I had the notion of wanting to live in my van, it started about a year prior to that. I had a big jacked up lifted truck. It was costing me crazy amounts in car payments, insurance, fuel, just to drive the thing every day, because I thought that's what I needed to fulfill my life, and so finally I started kind of coming across the mentality of like, you know what, like I don't need this in my life. So I started, with selling my truck, and I just found myself starting to like drill down my life and like getting rid of stuff that I didn't need, and getting rid of that truck was the biggest thing. And then, it came to about a year, I got really sick and my appendix ruptured. So I spent a few days in the hospital, and for some reason I came out of that with a totally different mindset. Like my mind was just naturally like thinking differently. And I was just like, what switched in my mind? It wasn't like this conscious decision, like I really need to turn my life around. It just kind of naturally happened. So anyways, making that transition, I came from living in a house. I had all the stuff that a typical American has of just junk and stuff. And so when you decide you're going to live in a van, you realize that it all can't go with you in the van. So you're looking at this house and stuff. You're like, well, I need a storage. So I'm going to move all of this into storage because I'm going to need it eventually. I did a lot of downsizing for sure. But it started with a storage unit. I thought I would be there on a daily basis to my storage unit to be getting stuff out while I was living in my van, because you just naturally think that way. And so then all of the stuff that, so here I go, stuff's in storage, but then I'm in my van and I'm like, okay, I'm going to need this in my van and this in my van. In my Volkswagen van, I've got basically a bed big enough for two people. And that first night that I was in my van, because I thought I needed all this stuff with me, I was sleeping in a bed made for two, and I was sleeping like this because I had stacks of boxes next to me, thinking like, oh, I'm going to need this and this and this. And I was like, wow, this is going to be van life. This is crazy. And within a month, I was like, oh my gosh, like get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. You just realize you don't need all this stuff. 6 months into it, I realized that like I hadn't been to, let's go back. A year into it, I realized that I hadn't been to my storage in 6 months, which meant if I hadn't touched any of that stuff in 6 months, why the heck do I need it? And it was probably actually in storage for 2 or 3 years, I'm embarrassed to say, before I was like, you know what? Clean out the storage. If I haven't touched it in that long, I don't need that in my life. And like I said, it's a long process to transform your mind into realizing what you need or don't need. But even to this day, it's kind of a daily inventory of what's in my van. And, I scan the space. Haven't used that. I can get rid of that. I'm always constantly thinking, what can I get out of this? Get it out of my space and minimize it. So and that's, 8 years later, still like with that mentality, and you learn more and more that you can deal with less.
Absolutely. Because
So,
those watching the video, right now you're in your office. So you have a setup where you have your office to work on your films, work on your videos, and then basically you have your van that you live in, sleep in, bop around town in, right? Like that. Can you
yep.
kind of touch base on that setup?
Yeah. So I'm sitting here in this nice edit studio. It looks like I live in this nice space. Well, this is the edit studio where we're currently working on our current film production. This is actually a spare room in one of our producers' house that he has set up as an edit studio. So my van is parked right outside. Van is my life every single day. So I park in and around town every single night. Is basically urban stealth camping for me, which I've just grown. If you check out the Living the Van Life YouTube channel, I've got several videos about urban stealth camping. That's kind of my favorite. Unless I'm getting out for the weekend, of course, then I like to go hit the hills. But on a daily basis, urban stealth camping, I park right in and around downtown Bellingham. I get a lot of feedback of people saying, oh, well, we can't do that in our town. And that may be. I'm probably pretty lucky with Bellingham being pretty laid back on that, and I can get away with quite a bit. But nonetheless, I always treat it as a stealth situation. I don't, I'm not in and out of my van and hanging my laundry out. It's very in a parking spot, go to bed, wake up, leave, go do the thing. So I've got this space. Eldad and I, my business partner, we've got a small little office space in downtown as well. So I bounce back and forth between those doing work. At night, it's in the van. I hit the gym every day after work to do some physical activity, and I shower there. And I've actually found that wintertime is probably my favorite time of being in the van. Like, I don't know why, which is probably, I think, probably the most scariest for people of like, oh, I could do a van in the summertime, but wintertime I couldn't do. And I don't know. It's actually very, very doable if you set yourself up right.
Yeah, especially
So yeah.
when I had my van, it was like I had my little cave, like my little fort that you used to make when you were a kid. You have your little heater in there, you're cooking food. It's almost like it's more of an adventure. It was for me. And, with urban stealth camping, I would do the same thing when I had my camper van Zep. And by the way, I might be buying that rig back. The guy up in Alaska I sold
no
it
way.
to. Yeah, he's going to be selling it, and he's going to sell it to maybe the same price that he bought it for. So
Wow,
trying
cool.
to figure the logistics of that out. Can't let the van go. But what I'd always do is, for example, I would park away from where I was going to be stealth camping, have all the lights on, like brush my teeth, get myself ready for bed, put on my PJs, and then once I got to the spot, just turn the rig off, lights off immediately, just go straight to bed. Maybe I'd have my phone. I'd be on my phone for a little bit at night. You couldn't really see that, up front, just with the curtains and everything. And, park for the night, get up early, not hang out all day, not have my doors open, music on, and just leave. Just keep it easy and simple for people. If they don't, if you don't do anything bad, then they don't care, just do your thing. Obviously with the bus, I wouldn't be able to get away with that. But with the Class A motorhome, it looked newer, and I got a little bit more brazen with that, where it was like a newer looking rig, and I'd wake up, open the door, people would be waving at me, where in the van I did get the cops called on me a couple times. I had a cop one time shaking the rig trying to get me up, but the thing is, I was like, urban camping, and it was in Astoria, California, and apparently they have a little bit of a transient problem there, so they're a little bit more strict.
Oh,
And he was like shaking the van, shining his lights on, but I had all the curtains on, and I was just underneath my covers because he didn't know if I was staying in somebody's house, like they can't just
yeah,
tow the rig. So
yeah,
I just waited. It was probably 20 minutes of him knocking on the door, shining his light in the front. And what I would do is obviously if you have a curtain up over the back in the bed, it looks like somebody's back there. So when I was urban
yeah,
camping, what I would do is leave that open, and then I'd just be under the covers, and I just wouldn't move. So he was like shining his flashlight through the front windshield, and like I just didn't move, so it just looked like a blanket back there, right? So
yeah, yeah.
that I've definitely had some stories urban camping. But do you have any other insights for people that are thinking about urban camping, or any other tricks like that you use to make it better? But again, it sounds like they're in Bellingham, and I've been to Bellingham. It's an amazing little spot. It's very laid back.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might not even have to go through that many steps, but are there any other tips or tricks that you picked up on?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, definitely keeping it simple. I think a lot of people think they want to try and hide when they're like, oh, I got to park my van in this dark alley and hide. My thing is like the best thing you can do is hide in plain sight. Like, if it's a street that empties out at night and it's completely empty and you're one solo vehicle parked there and it is a camper van, then, okay. So I always try to find a street that actually is near some apartments downtown that are going to have the residents of that apartment parking there. And if you're parked next to other vehicles, like, it's so easy to blend in. And exactly what you were talking about is like, if your setup requires a lot of like transforming your inside and lights on and making noise, do that off site, get all prepared, show up and just crawl into bed. Bellingham's definitely laid back. I spent a couple months, a few years back, in my van down and around Huntington Beach, well, basically the LA area. I really found that I liked Huntington Beach. Of course, it's the beach there. It's, kind of the surfer attitude. And so it's definitely more laid back, but there it's like, that wasn't Bellingham. That was more of what people talk about. Like, oh, well, we can't do that in Southern California. I did it for 2 months in and around Huntington Beach. And I went into the neighborhoods where all the cars were parallel parked on the side of the roads. And I did the same thing. I got ready off site. I pulled in, went to bed, did it for 2 months and never had a problem. And to me, it's hiding in plain sight. If you're that van that's like parked down that dark alleyway, chances are the cops are going to see it, and it does look creepy and it looks weird. So I say hide in plain sight and keep it simple. Keep your vehicle simple. I see it. I drive around town and I see people with like, foil over their windows and plastic bags. And it's like, that might be good for the privacy inside, but from the outside, that's like a dead giveaway of, hey, there's something going on inside that van, like foil on the windows and stuff like that. It's definitely tinted windows. I talk about that in my van, in my videos on my channel, that tinted windows have probably been one of the best investments for that. I got the dark limo tint on the sides. Standing on the outside, if you're just walking by and at a glance, like, you can't see nothing inside it. And it's not necessarily so people can't see inside of it, but when you draw your curtains, people can't see the curtains drawn. And I feel like anytime there's something covering the windows, it's like, what are they hiding? But if you got tinted windows and they can't see your window coverings, then they don't know. So
that's a really good tip. I didn't even think about that. And I guess Zeppelin had that too. The first camper van I had, and I'd be sitting inside working on the computer when I was living on the college campus. Like I thought people were able to look inside. So when I first moved into the van, so I was still learning everything, and they'd be like looking at the van. I thought they were looking at me, and then I bopped out real quick and looked. I was like, you can't see anything in there. Like, the previous owner already took care of that for me.
Yep. And that is the thing, is like, I find that I don't even close my curtains that much because of it being so blacked out from the outside. It's like, it's nice. You can be in there, you can see outside, people can't see you, and you don't always have to even close your curtains. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the next 2 or 3 years for both you and van life in general, I know it's a very broad statement. For you, not so much, like your plans. But where do you see this whole van life, RV life, schooly life thing going in the next 2 or 3 years, and then follow up with what your plans are? Where do you see yourself in the next 2 or 3 years?
Sure. Well, I think with YouTube, well, I mean, of course, not everybody that's living in a van has the mindset of like, let's put it on YouTube. I guess that's a lot of what you and I see, because that's kind of one of our big bases on it. But I think the opportunity for people to start thinking clear and thinking minimally, I feel like it provides people the opportunity to get out there and do that. I hope that people can go out and experience that, because what it's done for my life is something I'm so incredibly thankful for. So I hope that other people continue to do that. It doesn't have to be a social media thing. It doesn't even have to be a YouTube thing, but just people getting out there and living that way. So I hope it continues to grow, and I hope people do it for the right reasons, not just because it looks cool on social media. For me, it's always going to be a part of my life, 100%. Like, this wasn't just a temporary thing of like, oh, I'll do it for a couple months and then I'm out. Like, you know, I've been back and forth with it. I mean, I've been living in my van since 2011. The only time that I wasn't living in a van was I was living in a shop space that we were renting for our business, and it was a loft, and I was able to park my van. So it was like a giant man cave treehouse thing. So even then, it was not your typical like way of living. It was still very minimal. And I don't know. I hope people can train their way of thinking less about how they can make money and have all the fancy toys, and more about just fulfilling their life with awesomeness and happiness and doing what they love. But yeah, for me, like my plan, like I said, it'll always be part of it. Van life will always be part of my life. Seeing the growth in the channel over the last couple of months, when I took and just put everything I had into it, you know, I was working 7 days a week on the channel over the last few months. After hours, I come here and work on the film during the day. At about 5:30, I'd go and work on van life until 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was doing that like 7 days a week. And to see it grow and expand, and that became sustainable for me. That's been my only income for the last like 7 or 8 months. So to see that opportunity come, I'm like, I don't need anything else. Like, yes, I'm going to continue to build, work on the film and build the film production company, Emanate, that Eldad and I have together. We've got big visions for that, but my goal for that isn't like, oh, I want to make a lot of money so I can go buy a big house. Like, maybe if I could have a school bus or like a Sprinter van and maybe get out of the van again and have a little more room to stand up, that to me is like, it's not the mansion that I want to work for. So I honestly could live like this for the rest of my life and be perfectly content, as long as I was doing something that I love to do, you know, as a career, like filmmaking or photography. But yeah, I'm in it, man. Like, I'm super content living this way, and I don't see any reason to try and change it, you know?
Yeah, well, if you ever have any questions on school buses, if you're starting to look at rigs, I'll be more than
Yeah.
happy to point you in the direction that I would go.
Yeah, that's
Given
awesome.
your situation, you might not need a 40-footer like I went, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's plenty of options out there. Yeah, I mean, it's same for
Yeah.
me. I don't foresee any changes in my lifestyle from doing what I'm doing now, because this bus, the build that I'm in right now, I built it specifically to live in full time for the next 10, 15 years plus. You know, like
Yeah.
I built this to be pretty much my forever home. So all the building materials, everything I put into it was like, okay, so I'm building this to last. It's not just, you know, a couple of years or whatever. It's like, okay, so I'm
Yeah.
doing this to be my lifestyle. I want this to be my home for, you know, who knows how long, you know.
Yeah.
So I think once you get a real taste for it, once you realize how this lifestyle actually is, the people you meet on the road, how much opportunity, just like with your films, for me with Tiny Home Tours and the other, like my Off Grid Schoolie, the smaller channel, just the opportunities filming for those, like not even just monetarily, but just the connections that I've made through that. I've gathered two very valuable mentors that have helped me through some important questions and, you know, different situations in my life that I wouldn't have ever met them if it wasn't for the channel. Like they offered to mentor me and help me out through these particular times in my life, you know, that's invaluable. Right. So
Yeah.
just even getting out on the road and getting after it and meeting people, it's once you get a little taste, that's it, man. Like you're willing to do whatever it takes to make it work. But I know you got some editing to do. Want to be conscious of your time. If somebody was wanting to follow you, I'll link it in the show notes. People can link directly to it. Where can people follow you on social media? What are some of your accounts?
So on YouTube, of course, it's Living the Van Life. That's where all my YouTube content about living in a van goes up on there. On Instagram, I've got Living the Van Life, or I guess at Living the Van Life for Instagram. So yeah, you guys can go on and check that out. Facebook, it's just my name, Chad DeRosa. Got a lot of people from YouTube that follow me over there too. So, but yeah, that's where you can find the stuff.
Awesome, man. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thanks for doing it. Appreciate it.